A shocking attack in Vancouver on the eve of one of the most consequential elections this country has seen. I'm Eric Sorensen, in for Mercedes Stevenson. A special edition of the West Block starts now. Late last night, a driver slammed into a crowd at a Vancouver festival. Multiple deaths and injuries are reported. We'll get the latest. And as Canadians get ready to cast their ballots in what could be called the anti-51st state election, our election panel tells us what they expect to see tomorrow. A stunning mass attack in Vancouver last night. A vehicle was driven directly into a crowd celebrating at a Filipino festival. The aftermath is difficult to look at. We'll show you a small part in order to underline the massive impact of this tragedy. At least 9 were killed and many more were injured. Leaders reacted, changing their campaign schedules.
This is so horrific. I don't even know what to say. I was there, and I just imagined the faces of the kids that I saw smiling and dancing. I imagined the aunties that were there. Imagining I don't even know what to say. It's horrific. I'm heartbroken. And I just want the Filipino community to know, like, we stand with you. Everyone is with you.
Mark Carney spoke this morning.
Last night, families lost a sister, a brother, a mother, a father, a son, or a daughter. Those families are living every family's nightmare. And to them and to the many others who were injured, to the Filipino-Canadian community, and to everyone in the broader Lower Mainland, Vancouver, I would like to offer my deepest condolences and my wishes for strength and compassion in this tragic time.
And from Pierre Poilievre, thank you to the first responders who are at the scene as we wait to hear more. A suspect is in custody. And joining us now are Seamus O'Regan, Nathan Cullen, Gilles Duceppe, and Lisa Raitt. We want to talk obviously about the election, this devastating incident last night in Vancouver, the impact you could see that it had on the leaders who've spoken about it so far. And Nathan, maybe start with you. Just what kind of changes does it affect or impact does it have on a day like today, right before the election?
It's almost difficult in some ways because this election, as you said in your introduction, is incredibly consequential, and then to have a moment like this. And as you said, you could see the impact that it had on both the leaders that were shown, Jagmeet and Mark, and I'm sure Pierre and others will come out today with their further statements. But this is I know this community, I know this area of Vancouver. It's incredibly tight-knit, incredibly connected. The shock that will go through the Filipino community, not just in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, but I think perhaps right across the country. Will be real and profound. I don't know. I guess on another note, I'm proud in some ways of the reaction. Those reactions from both Jagmeet and Mr. Carney were real and sincere and important. And I think there's not much you can say to the families and the communities that will provide solace, but at least this. Yeah. Right, that the leaders in Canada will be unified in the response to this and the expression of condolences for
Lisa.
I agree with Nathan. The Filipino community is known for its heart and its caregiving, and I just can't imagine how they're feeling today. They're just open and loving, and my heart goes out to all of them in the community. And I think we did successfully put politics aside on this one.
It changes the schedule, because I know that Mr. Carney, Seamus, had just a lineup of places he had to get to, and not all of that can happen now.
I just spoke with the Prime Minister's office a moment ago, and the situation definitely fluid. But, to the point that we were making earlier, I mean, I grew up in a small town, Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Labrador. The Filipino flag flies all the time in front of the town hall there because of the number of members of the Filipino community who have made it their home. So this is something that affects every part of the country. This is an incredibly important part of Canada.
Gilles, you've been in politics for such a long time. I mean, you've seen so many tragedies.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I want to offer my condolences to the families and all those injured also. And election or not, it's awful.
It is.
Yeah. Every time it's awful. And then quite a few times it's a question of a terrorist attack. But more and more, we see it's a problem of mental health.
Yeah.
And we have to, I think, try to find a solution for that, because there's a lack of services for people having mental health problems. And I also want to say that Yves-Francois Blanchet also made a declaration on that. We didn't see that before, but I think it affects everyone independently of your political opinion.
Yeah.
Very true. Just now, I think we can move then into the campaign itself that we're talking about. As we head into the last hours of this election, there has been one larger-than-life figure overshadowing all of it. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard. There's nothing that rallies Canada together like the threat of the country being torn apart. And that threat loomed large over this election, courtesy of Donald Trump. The American president's taunts of annexing Canada and upending our economy with on-again, off-again tariffs have made this the anti-51st state election.
President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us.
Mark Carney has repeated that line throughout the election, while Trump replayed his own favorite tune.
I have to be honest, as a state, it works great.
As Trump's quips help drive a record number of advanced voters to the polls, the question remains, which leader do Canadians trust to navigate this Trump turmoil? It has been an extraordinary impact on a Canadian election. We've been, all of us, around enough to see and to just witness what was happening, I think because it was such a shock to have the U.S. president say and do the things he's doing. We're just not prepared for it. It upended all of the campaigns to some degree and in different ways. But one leader seemed to come out ahead in terms of the polling from this, Seamus, and that was Mark Carney. How do you explain the way the campaign has if been affected by Donald Trump?
I think collectively it's the response of the Canadian people to Donald Trump, and then it was how leaders reacted to that response, more so than even reacting directly to what the president has been saying and keeps saying. I think that's what's extraordinary. I think that there were perhaps those who thought that this was starting to wane, that the president was seemed to not have Canada on the brain so much. Well, now he's saying no, he's pretty much trolling us.
Yeah.
And he definitely has hard thoughts on the matter. I am impressed by the patriotism that you see from all quarters, regardless of which direction then they decide to go in. I'm quite heartened by the fact that Canadians really do appreciate that this is an existential crisis. I think that the Prime Minister picked up on it very early, and I think he found himself where Canadians are. But I think it's really important to position this as Canadians led on this, and then it's a matter of how leaders reacted to Canadians' reaction.
Well, and I guess that's part of the point, because everybody's been affected by it. Everybody has been pretty unified in terms of how they react to Trump, but it has thrown the Conservative campaign in for more of a loop.
Has it? I think the Conservative campaign has really been about affordability the whole time. What the needle they have to thread, though, is, do you really think a fourth term of a Liberal government is going to be the one to help the economy diversify in order to take on Trump? So they're kind of a step back. What the Conservatives want the Canadian public to hear is the fact that in the last 10 years, we have seen our economy go down. It's not in a great place. You're not feeling really good about it. And maybe we're a bit more vulnerable to the claims from Mr. Trump as a result, because we can't pivot naturally to other countries in the world to increase. As a result, the Conservatives have to try to thread the needle, as I said, between why we're in the situation we're in and why the Liberals aren't the right people to bring you through.
So Jagmeet Singh, he definitely was sidelined by this, and you can see the polling, what it says for the party and what could be in the offing here. What do you make of it?
Well, what the election looked like 6 months ago and what it looks like now is totally different, and that's politics. We've seen this many times before. What you think the ballot question will be, as you say, Mr. Trump just has this amongst many other twitches that I'm sure there were many Conservatives that were just praying for him to shut up for a minute about this, because this is an unhelpful frame for this conversation. And he seemed to have at least a week, maybe it was less than that, where he was not talking about annexing Canada, but now he's back again. For the NDP, affordability questions and the pivot has happened, which I think was smart. 2 weeks ago, you saw Jagmeet change his offer to Canadians, and one of the offers was, what comes next? right? And what type of parliament do we make, and what kind of parliament did we just have, where there was an agreement between the Liberals and the NDP, which produced results for Canadians. There'll be 9 million Canadians this month who will now get access to dental care, many for the first time in their lives. That matters if you're one of those people. Pharmacare and child care agreements, and the list goes on. That was a bit of an insurance policy and a bit of check on power, and I admit my bias here. I like when parties have to work together. I really do, because our politic over time, when there's a majority government, it was true when there was majority Conservative and a majority Liberal, the concentration of power is not just within the party, it actually concentrates right within the Prime Minister's office to a more and more select number of people. And I think Canadians are best served when we have a parliament that represents the broad interests of a very diverse country. And that means that MPs need to have a little bit of more force than they traditionally do in a majority government. So that's been Jagmeet's pitch, which I think is an intelligent play, and it's also been just challenged to wedge into the conversation while we're threatened by the U.S.
Part of the tactic was also to kind of concede the government to Mark Carney. Mr. Blanchet more or less said the same thing in an attempt, I think, to bring some voters back. But he also, just in the last couple of days, called Canada an artificial country, and it just sounded almost Trumpian. Why would he say that?
It's not Trumpian. I would say that when you look at Trudeau's declaration about the post-national country, this is exactly, in other words, what Trudeau was saying. Secondly, I would say that Quebec didn't sign the Constitution. It's quite important. It was almost unanimous at the National Assembly in Quebec not to sign the Constitution. Having said that, I think the important thing for the Bloc and Blanchet, and this is the card he played during the campaign, he says obtaining a mandate is not only being named to negotiate, but also what will you be negotiating? I was a negotiator before being in politics, and it's important for Quebec to be sure that supply management, the softwood lumbers, aluminum, the culture will be protected in those negotiations. Because Carney said that he will start negotiating next week. But before starting negotiation, he has to obtain a mandate. That means meeting with other leaders, defending each part of each province and their priorities.
But why did so many? It appears Bloc voters suddenly shift to this Anglophone Liberal as the person they would support?
Yeah, I think there'll be around 25 or so because of the situation. It's quite a different situation than an election like we used to have. But let us remember there'll be two important things coming in the next 2 years. A middle mandate election in the States. That'd be important. And election in Quebec also. And the Parti Québécois is well ahead in
at
voting
this moment,
intention.
and with the few days before an election, the only thing that matters is Donald Trump. And I can
That's
tell
it,
you,
but this is why I'm
Trump
saying
1.0, I was on Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee, and you polled Canadians day in and day out. This is in the first administration, before he was making threats to our country as directly and consistently as he is now. But there was nothing. If you combined everything else, health care, unemployment, the economy,
I agree with
combined,
you.
But did not equal how Canadians felt about Donald Trump.
You asked the question, which was the concession, which came from the NDP and it came from the Bloc to acknowledge it looks like Carney's going to win. Part of the reason I think for that is the looming strategic vote. Right? Frankly, it was a fear of some of the things that Poilievre was saying.
Exactly.
Maybe not in particular, but in tone that reminded some Canadians, talking about crowd size and killing the CBC and all these things, that looked a little Trumpian, Lisa, and Poilievre's tone. It made center-left voters fearful of what was coming. Liberals have used this since time immemorial to say, we know you love the NDP, maybe you like the Bloc or Greens, but you've got to come with us again for this reason alone. The reasons are real, but I think that concession allows New Democrat voters, Bloc voters maybe, to safely go back.
Give you the last...
You've not conceded.
Point one, I don't concede the election. Point two, I don't think it's about Trump only. I think people vote with their pocketbooks, and they're feeling it now. Trump is going to cause more pain in the economy.
That is right.
And that's what they're thinking about.
And that's what we want to talk about next, but we're going to take a break first, and we'll be right back.